Awesome. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate that. Pleasure to meet you. Can I ask your name, please?
Oh yeah, my name is Howard.
Hello, Howard. Pleasure to meet you. I am Wesley. We are a pen testing company that does everything from small to medium to large pen tests, and we're looking for a junior pen tester. In the beginning, you'll be joined by a senior pen tester. You'll be just hacking along with them and basically following a methodology, but you'll also be expected to add to that methodology eventually. You'll be serving many different clients, and a typical pen test takes anywhere from a week to a couple of months. So, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me as well, of course.
Yeah, that sounds good.
First of all, tell me three bad things about you.
That took me off guard. Three bad things about me. One of the things that I found is that I do struggle with the idea of thinking that I don't know enough. So if I find myself in a space like this one with everyone who is all these experienced hackers, one of the things that I don't do is I don't speak up. I hold my thoughts to myself because I think I'm the least experienced person in that space. And sometimes I do have good ideas, and that space might not know about those ideas because I was doubting myself. So if I'm to call that bad, I would say I need to speak up more and just be assertive if I think I have an idea, understand that it matters. And that's a struggle that I think a lot of people struggle with in this industry. So that's one of them.
Sorry about
Uh,
that whistle, but in the background, by the way, there's a storm going on and it's blowing on the windows.
yeah. Usually, usually in the past, I didn't have a list of three, but I would say another area of opportunity that I would like to improve on is knowing when to give up. I've spent hours in countless hours on bug bounty programs, and I wasn't getting anywhere, and I thought I was getting somewhere, and I just spent 12 hours on something that didn't lead somewhere. So if there's any sort of mentorship and advice on knowing when to stop and knowing that this is a rabbit hole like they do in the OSCP, or just knowing that it's okay to get stuck and not be obsessed over a foothold that you thought works but it doesn't. So that second one is almost like time management, but also knowing when to move on and cut your losses. um, my mentality has always been I failed, and I think that needs to change to I didn't fail. I tried, I enumerated, I didn't find anything. And what looked like it was promising, it's okay that I need to move on. So that's the second thing that I would say is an area of improvement for myself, especially in this space of pen testing. And the third one is documentation, especially on my tools that I write. If I work on a tool, I fill in the gaps. I don't document enough. I wish I did have the ability to really document when I'm working on things, but I focus on finishing what I'm working on and doing documentation later, and usually it never happens. It's a terrible thing to admit to, but uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I can understand that completely. But in a job interview for pen testers, documentation is gonna be very important. So
Yeah.
what they're gonna be, the follow-up question I'm gonna ask is, how would you improve on the documentation? How would you improve yourself? And before you answer that, just a couple of quick things. Failure is not a thing.
Mm,
Failure does not exist, my friend. Just say,
mm,
just get that out of your head, because every single time that you fail, you are experiencing a new thing and you're learning. So replace the word with failure with learning, and suddenly your outlooks will completely change. At least that's what happened to me. And second of all, when you think like that, you also won't be so held back to speak up, because You know that you're the least experienced person in the room, and that's what I try to do is I try to make myself the least experienced person in the room, and then I speak up because people love correcting you much more than they love telling you new things. It's strange how that works. So don't worry too much about that imposter syndrome either. We're all experiencing it. We all think we're not good enough.
Yeah.
May I add something?
Of course, my friend.
Um, I want to say too. I teach security. Um, Thomas Edison, the creator of the light bulb, he once said, "I did not fulfill the 10,000 times. I just found a way. I just found 10,000 ways. It does not work."
I love that one. Yes, I've seen that
Yeah.
one as well.
Yeah. That's true. I like that. As well.
Like in like you all said before already, and we probably already know this, but it's hard to fail. It doesn't feel doesn't feel fun because you don't get the achieved you don't get to achieve the results that you've been expecting to achieve, which is what failure is really about. And so it's not fun, but I've learned to embrace failure and I've learned to like it because you will see that I throw out a lot of stupid stuff on Twitter, but that's how I learn. That's just how I learn. You have people that want to be correct in everything. I am not the kind of person who wants to be correct in everything. That's not me. Like, okay, of course I have to teach the correct thing, so I'm sure that in teaching I am correct. But even when writing an article, it's an article. Do your own research. That's important, even if you read articles. Anyway, so can you tell me what kind of tool Burp Suite is?
Yeah, Burp Suite is a very wonderful tool, especially when you're interacting with APIs and web applications. And the first introduction that I had with Burp Suite was through the OSCP, which prohibited the use of the professional version of Burp Suite and all the other plugins that do a lot of automation. So most of the experience that I had with that tool was uh, with the free version and the limited tooling that it has. And mostly, I found it to be a very wonderful tool for knowing how the web application is processing my request and being able to intercept and see what's going on, and for testing the obvious things like SQL injections, and also being able to see how the requests are being processed by the server.
That's a really good answer. Be sure to mention that it's a man-in-the-middle proxy and that there are other man-in-the-middle proxies as well. This is
Yes.
just one of them. And if you have some free time, Burp Suite has a pro version, a trial version of the pro version. Play around with it a little bit so you can at least tell something about the live scanners if they ask you about it. I wouldn't even mention it myself, like how much experience I have with the pro version. I would just say what Burp Suite is because then you're already presuming that I want to know how much experience you have with the pro version, while I actually was just testing to know if you know what a middle man in the middle proxy is. So that's what I always do in an interview as well. I think I want to explain way too much because I want to be as complete as possible to the person that is sitting in front of me. But be complete, but be also brief because like people like me, we don't have a lot of time, so it has to go fast. It's like man in the middle proxy, I can intercept traffic and blah blah blah. That's it.
Yes,
But you
that
did
makes
really,
sense.
that's really well. That was a really good answer, by the way. Anybody who would sit in my shoes would think that you know what Burp Suite is and that you know how to use it. So you demonstrated that. through there. Can you tell me what a CVE is?
Yes, a CVE, we use the term CVE to classify vulnerabilities that are found. It's common vulnerability. I don't know the exact words for the term, but I know that with CVEs, when we find a vulnerability and we submit it to, say, exploit DB, it's usually assigned a CVE number or ID, and CVE is just a common vulnerability that was found, and it's defined, and the industry knows what it is. But the most important part of that is it's classified. It's given a classification, whether it's high, low, or um, medium.
Sorry about that. Had a little bit of a cough. That's a great explanation. You've told me common vulnerabilities and exploits. That's what I wanted to hear. You said what they are and that they are given a score. That's very important, a CVSS score. So that's a great answer. Contrary to that, do you also know what CWEs are?
Actually, I don't know about CWEs. I
It's
might have seen them in passing, but I'm not too familiar with them.
definitely not a problem. CWEs are common web exploits. So it's basically just a list of common web exploits, whereas these CVEs will be more like vendor-specific exploits and stuff like that. It's also hardware exploits, by the way, CWEs. Okay, perfect. Now, let's say you found an account takeover via cross-site scripting. You were able to steal the cookies. Um, I'm your client. Explain what you found.
Yeah, so I would say first I would say how I enumerated or accessed the site. I would say I visited your website. I saw that you had a login form or a contact us form that was vulnerable. You said cross-site scripting.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so I saw a web form with cross-site scripting vulnerability. I did test. I would maybe, if they're technical people, I would explain that I tested using some automated tools, maybe Nixio being one of them, and I tested for cross-site scripting, and I found out that the client-facing portion of your website did take input from a client, a, a person, and it processed that input and without sanitization or validation, and I was able to put custom lines of code, and uh, your back end was able to execute it, or the front end was able to execute it, and it showed up uh, and gave me the user session cookies. Sorry, I think I did bad on that.
That was really good already. You said some really important things there, like no user input sanitization. That's a really important thing I wanted to hear, and the fact that you're stealing the cookies. What I would explain is, look, sir, your cookies, they have the HTTP only flag. Normally, it should be enabled. It's not enabled. I was able to steal your cookies through a technique called cross-site scripting. And cross-site scripting is basically, like you said, through unsanitized, not sanitizing the user input properly, we're able to insert malicious code, which was executed by the front end. That was perfect. So you did really well on that. That's basically what your clients want to hear. They don't have to hear a big explanation about what cross-site scripting is. Honestly, as a manager or as a client, I wouldn't really care. All I would care about is that you're able to completely take over other people's accounts. That would scare me. And it's important that you stress that as well, the impact of your vulnerability. But that's a really good answer. I love that. So the last one, it might be a little bit strange, but how many babies are born every day?
That's a strange one.
The reason I'm asking this is I'm not I'm not looking for the answer. I don't care about the answer. What I'm looking for is your analytical skills and your ability to handle unexpected questions like this. Like, I would say, okay, let's make an estimation. Let's try to make an estimation that on average you have two people and blah blah. I would just try to make something up at the spot, but I would mostly ask the person questions. Okay, do you mean babies born in the USA, or do you mean babies born worldwide, or like, okay, you know, it's just to see if you can handle a curveball. And that's an interview technique that Elon Musk used, or Jeff Bezos, I'm not sure anymore. But they would ask how many gas stations were in America. And that was just purely to test the analytical skills of the person there. So really good answers. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And for me right now, I'm really sorry, my friends, that this was a short Twitter space, but I already have to go. It's 2 a.m., so